Welcome to the discussion for part two, chapter two. So Raskolnikov leaves the police station, and his first thought is they are going to suspect me and then they're going to come search my room. So I've got to hurry up, grab these things, get out of here, and figure out what I'm going to do. And he is thinking about how the night after he had killed her, that when he kept waking up in this feverish dream state and jumping up and thinking about things that he needed to do to cover his tracks, that he had at that point determined that he was just going to take all these things and just throw them into the water. He was going to throw them into the river, throw them off the bridge. And he grabs everything, gets it all in his pockets, starts walking towards the water. And then when he gets there, he's like, oh, there's so many people. There's like people in boats and people down washing clothes. And he's like, and what if I throw these boxes? He doesn't just have money. He's got like boxes with watches and earrings. And he's like, what if they float? And he's like, of course they'd float. Like that would be just his luck. And so he's thinking about that. And as he's walking away, he's like, no, this isn't going to work. So he's like, oh, maybe if I go to a more secluded river. He's like, if I go back to the Neva, there's less people there. I wouldn't be as observed. And then he sees a place that's like it's off the street. It's kind of off the main street, but it's pretty secluded. It's kind of like between these two walls. You'd have to walk through there, and it would have only been used. It's full of coal dust. So there's like nobody's really around. It's not really used anymore. Like it looks like it might have been a place where there had been like an old carriage house or like cabs or something maybe had come there. And there's this shed, and he's like, this is perfect. Nobody can see me. Nobody would really have reason to even come in here. And if they came in here, there's only one way to get in here. So he can kind of see. And so he is kind of looking around, and he's like, oh yeah, there's this rock, right? He's like, I could just dump everything here and just run away. But he's like, oh, there's a rock. Like there's this huge rock that he can tell has kind of been there from the beginning. And he's able to move the rock, and there's this good indentation underneath it. And he lays everything in there, all the jewelry, the purse on top, puts the rock over on the top of it, kind of pats it down with his foot. And he's like, who's going to look under a rock? Like no one's going to look under this rock. And he just feels like this overwhelming sense of relief. Like he's gotten away with it. Now there's no evidence tying it to him. He's like, yeah, even if somebody found that, why would they ever think it was me? Like they're not going to put two and two together. Like that doesn't make any sense. And so he feels relieved, and he's leaving and he's walking, and he's kind of questioning. He starts to question his whole plan that he began with. So the plan that he began with was, and what he had written his dissertation on in at university, was this like this heroic killing for the greater good. So the plan was to kill the pawnbroker in order to get all of her money to help other people for the greater good. And he's like, but he's starting to realize that he really hasn't followed the plan. And then he's like, why was I thinking of throwing all these things? Like his first thought was to throw it all away, like throw it in the river. And he's like, well, if I did that, then that wouldn't be helping anybody. And then it would have just been covering up the murder of the pawnbroker. And that's not the heroic for the greater good plan of why I murdered her. Then I'm just a murderer. So he's starting to struggle with, am I just a murderer? Like I was supposed to do this for the greater good. And then he's questioning himself like, you don't even know how much money you got. Like you've never looked in the purse. You've never counted the money. You barely looked at the jewelry that you found to see what the value of it was. And here you are hiding it away. So again, questioning himself, like, how is that for the greater good? Like, you're not even like that was supposed to be the focus. The focus was supposed to be getting as much money from this lady as possible in order to help people who really needed it. And as we've seen in these past few chapters, that his initial instinct is to help people. When he sees Marmeladov's family, crying and no food, and Marmeladov has spent through all the money, his first reaction is to give her money. When he sees that girl out on the street who had been taken ill advantage of and is drunk, and, he sees somebody else, a predator close by, his first instinct is to give the policeman money to get this girl home safely. It's the first thing that that's his heart, is to give and to help people. But if he's not going to be focused on the money and helping people, then he's not a heroic person in this scenario. He's just a murderer who's then now, after the murder, just trying to cover up his tracks to the point that he's willing to throw it away and then have nothing for it. And so he's like, in his mind, kind of coming to this realization that, one, he failed on the mission, and two, he's certainly not behaving like somebody who is going to be the hero. He's behaving like somebody who is a criminal who murdered somebody and who's just trying to get rid of the evidence. So he's a little shaken by these realizations that he's starting to have. And he's like, then he's kind of like, well, I'm really sick, and, maybe I just need to, get better. And he's walking, and he suddenly realizes that he is once again basically in front of Razumihin's apartment building. And that was his first instinct after he got that letter from his mother, was like to go to Razumihin. He's like, why would that be my first instinct? Like, what do I think this guy's going to be able to do for me? He hasn't seen him in 4 months. He's been avoiding people. Razumihin was like really kind of his only friend. And he's like, well, what made me walk here? Was I meaning to walk here, or was I just like walking here and then like surprised that I got here? Is this just kind of another coincidence? He keeps questioning if he's doing things of his own accord, or are things like supernaturally happening. Like when he had walked up in the market in a time when it wasn't his quickest way home, and he just happens to come up upon Lizaveta talking to the merchants, and it's like the timing is so coincidental. And he's like, I wasn't planning on doing it, but it's like this information was just in front of me. And like the time when he's in the tavern and he hears the other student talking about like, oh, somebody, could just kill that old lady and take all of her money. And it's like, I was just thinking that. And then he comes up again and he's in front of Razumihin's house. And it's like, these things are just happening. And he keeps noticing, like, I wasn't planning on doing this, or like, it just all seems like providential in a way. Like, these things are happening almost in a supernatural way. And he's noticing that. And it's as if like, the universe is drawing him to Razumihin. He doesn't know why. And so he's like, well, I'm here. I might as well go up. And so he does go up, and he instantly regrets it, because he's like, oh yeah, well, to come up here, I guess I didn't really expect him to be home. And I've been avoiding people like the plague. I don't want to see anybody, especially after murdering the pawnbroker. He's like, really just doesn't want to see anybody, talk to anybody. He's in very ill humor. And Razumihin, as I said in another discussion, is like sunshine to Raskolnikov's cloudy exterior. Like Razumihin is just all like joy and happiness, and like nothing gets him down. He's always got, some plan, and he's the antithesis of Raskolnikov. And so it's an interesting case study to see these two, because they're both the same age. They both come from university. They both have had to drop out because they couldn't afford their lessons. And whereas Raskolnikov has been just like in depression and let himself go and let his lessons go, and it's just kind of given up on life. Razumihin's like, oh no, like we're getting at it. I'm gonna make this work out. He's like, really hustling to get back on his feet and to make things work out for himself. And so Raskolnikov goes to him, and he's like, well, I don't even know why I'm here. I guess I thought you could help me get some lessons, but I don't even really want that. And Razumihin's like, I'm glad you're here. You're the perfect person to help me out. And, forget lessons. I'm on to a new thing. He's got a new hustle going. And so this new hustle is he's met some guy who's starting this publishing house. And his big thing is he's turning these German school texts or like textbooks into Russian. He's translating. And he's like, so he gives me money and paper and pens, and I write out the translation from the German text into Russian. And he's like, I'm not really good at German. Sometimes I'm making it up. I'm not very good at spelling, but I'm doing it. And he's like, here, I'll split it with you. Like, he's like instantly giving him like half his money. He's like, I'll cut you in on the deal. You and I can do it together. And after this, then you and I can move on to the, next one he's got about whales. And he's just like, this is going to be great. We're both going to be saved. And it's like just rattling it off. And Raskolnikov is like, it's too much. It's too much peopling. It's too much happiness, too much joy. He just like turns around and leaves. And Raskolnikov's like, or Razumihin is like, well, what the devil did you come for? Like, what, you come here, you don't say two words. And he's noticing, he's like, you're sick. You don't look good. He's like grabbing his hand, feeling for his pulse. Raskolnikov's like, it's just like too much. Razumihin is just too much for Raskolnikov. Razumihin is this extrovert, like social, knows everybody, very touchy. Raskolnikov is just like, oh gosh, people, no talking, no touching. So they're just like quite the opposites. And it's just funny to watch them, like I said before, exist in the same space, and how they approach things and how they approach each other, and how they have no effect on each other. Raskolnikov's dour, depressing, gloomy attitude affects Razumihin not at all. And Razumihin's joyful, sunny attitude does not seem to permeate Raskolnikov's cloud, but yet they just continue to coexist as like two completely separate and different people. And it's super funny. And so he does take the German, he takes the pens, the paper, he leaves. He says nothing. He gets out in the street and he's like, this is not what I want to do. He goes back up, puts it back on the table, and leaves again. And Razumihin's like, well, where did you live? Where do you live? And Raskolnikov's like not even answering him. He doesn't want anything to do with it. And he just walks back out onto the street. And he's just mindlessly walking again, so much so that he's in the middle of the street and almost gets run over by a carriage. And so the driver of the carriage takes his whip and snaps the whip on his back to be like, buddy, get out of the street. And he's, kind of pissed about this. And some lady thinks he's a beggar and feels sorry for him, puts, money into his hand, and, just like, prayers for you, like getting back on your feet type of a vibe. And people are making fun of him, like, oh, he's probably a pickpocket, this is probably all an act. And he's just, disgusted and overwhelmed. And he takes this money, looks at it, he finally realizes like, oh, I've got this money in my hand, and he just throws it into the river. And he walks off and he goes back home. He gets back up into his apartment. And he's been out of the house for 6 hours. He's sick and he's just been walking and he's just exhausted. And he lays down, and Nastasia comes in with food and a candle. And she's just like, you're really sick. You're really not looking good. He has this dream, this crazy dream where he thinks that the superintendent from the police office is beating his landlady. He wakes up from this dream thinking that he's sure, but he's hallucinating all the sounds. He thinks he's wide awake, and he hears, and he's like, it's the police officer. They're here probably after me, but they're beating the landlady. And he can hear like so vividly, like that he's visualizing like her head hitting, banging her head against the stairs. And he thinks he hears that everybody from all the other rooms comes out to like see it and hear it. And he's just so traumatized scared that the police are there, and also like upset about what he's hearing with his landlady getting beaten. And when Nastasia comes in, he's like, why was he here beating the landlady? And she's like, what are you talking about? Nobody was here. And he's like, no, I heard it. I was awake. I was, I was listening. I was sitting up. And she's like, she says something weird. She's like, it's the blood. And he's like, what do you mean it's the blood? Like, he's nervous, everything she's saying. And she's like, it's the, blood from the fever. It's coagulating in your brain behind your ears, and it's making you have these crazy dreams. And she's just like, the landlady's fine. Like everything's fine here. And he just goes back to sleep and, back into his fever dream, back into his, sleep. And so we're seeing a couple of things here. We're seeing that mainly I think the main key point is seeing him start to realize that, he knew the plan didn't go off as planned because of like the unforeseen circumstances of Lizaveta coming in, of the two men being at the door, of having to run away, um, and him not getting everything that he wanted to get. It's like he prided himself on this plan and how it was going to be heroic, and he planned it for months. And it's like he's starting to realize, like, wow, he really didn't come away with like what was even the purpose of it. It's like she's dead, Lizaveta's dead. He doesn't have all this money that he thought. It's like he didn't really think it all through. And so that is starting to permeate in his brain, in his subconscious. He's starting to realize that. He's also really sick. And so that is playing a part in like his delirium. Like he's not thinking clearly. So it's like, is he not thinking clearly because of his feverish state? Is he not thinking clearly because of because of like a mental crisis? He's very agitated, and he just, ever since committing the crime, he's feeling very cut off from his old life, his old self, from all of humanity. He says from that point on, he just feels like sick and disgusted looking at everybody. He hates their faces. He hates everything about it. I think what he really hates is he hates himself. Like he hates what he's done, and he feels the weight of the sin, and that has cut him off. It's not like the people are disgusting. It's that it feels disgusting, and he knows that now there's this blackness. There's a difference. There's a stark difference. And he wants to push it off on that it's other people and it's other things and it's other, but it's actually him. And it's almost like it's eating him alive. It's starting to, like, we're seeing the beginning of it, like festering and eating him alive. But he has this lifeline to Razumihin, who is like I said, sunshine and just this great, joyful character, and just really shows you this. You're going to see this very stark, like choices in how to approach life, choices in how to view things, choices in the steps that we take, and um, having a hand in making decisions and choices, and choosing to be joyful and choosing to see the good. And so we're going to continue on reading through part 2, and I will see you in chapter 3.